In this video, I want to talk about self-defense and fighting where there's a size disadvantage. Stick around. Here where I live, we have not gotten a lot of snow in the last few years, but we got us a good pounding last night, and it is gorgeous out here. Truth be told, this is something that people think about, especially people who are in training, people who are concerned about being able to defend themselves if they're ever attacked. You know, the world is a jungle, and we're trying to figure out whether or not we can survive some of the bigger beasts that are walking the land, if you know what I'm saying. Towards the end of the video, I will talk about some basic techniques, not to inundate you with too much information. This is not going to be an incredibly long video, but before we understand technique, we've always got to have our mind in the right place. Technique should be the tip of the iceberg, but our understanding and our mind should be the weapon that we focus on the most. For all of my get to the point critics in the comment section, and what they're talking about is just get to the fighting part, get to the bullet points. I don't work that way. I didn't build my channel that way. I always teach and lay a foundation first. Size always matters, but size does not always determine the outcome. The reason this understanding is so important is because if you tap out here, you're going to tap out here. Size matters, absolutely, it does. But we have plenty of evidence through experience, through fights we've seen, through fight footage, and even the animal kingdom to prove that there's times when the smaller opponent can prevail, and they need to believe that they can. But in self-defense, prevailing is not always getting the knockout or getting the tap out, but it's a clean getaway. I want to show you a clip where there's an extreme size difference. Now, these individuals probably could have avoided being in this situation. Nevertheless, they chose to go at each other. But I want you to take a look at the size difference in these men and how easy it would have been for the smaller opponent to tap out mentally. But watch what he does instead. Even with the size advantage, he's able to get a strike with a changed level. Another popular example is a young man who was being harassed by his older neighbor, and the older neighbor was getting in his face, and the young man, he took action and struck the guy and dropped him, knocked him out. The other guy was much bigger, but the young guy stood his ground. He did what he had to do, and he wasn't sitting around crying about being smaller. He pushed him back and took a strike. I'm not saying that it's always going to work out that way. I'm just telling you that it can work out that way. So if you're smaller, not only do you have to have your mind right, and you have to believe that you can prevail and that you can get away, two, you need to be preparing your body. Just because you're smaller don't mean you're not bigger in size and capability. I've come across a lot of guys in my day that were big, tall, weighty, but very weak and out of shape. If you will take care of yourself as a smaller person, I'm an average size guy. I'm an average height. I'm about 200 pounds. Some would say that's kind of big, but I'm just an average size guy. I've always considered myself to be that. But I try to be the best average size that I can be by taking care of myself. I'm going to the gym. I'm keeping my cardio up. I'm always training here at the house. I get together with people. I train. I do everything I can to stay sharp, to be the best version of my size that I can be. There's going to be times where you may be the smaller person in height and in weight, but in physicality, you may be larger. So you always need to make sure that you're striving to be the best physical version of yourself that you can be, because you might be smaller, but you might be bigger here, and you might be bigger in physicality and skill. Here's the deal, my friend. You and I don't have the pressure or the assignment of being the most dangerous person in the vicinity at any given point in time, but we can still be one of the most prepared. All we can do is our part to train and be prepared physically. Our goal is to get away, but being prepared is where the honor is at. Now that the mental and physical prep conversation is out of the way, let's talk technique. When you go up against a bigger person, you cannot play their game. You cannot clash with them head to head. For example, if you just want to stand in front of the bigger person and throw punches, oftentimes the bigger person is going to have reach, they're going to have leverage, they're going to have everything on you. In most cases, you've got to change the game. First, if you can get away, hightail it, man. Get out of there. You got nothing to prove. If you're in a situation where you can get out and you don't have to fight, get out of there. I'm going to get some pushback here, but I stand by this anyway. And there's this statement going around that says, never go to the ground in a street fight. Do I agree with that from an idealistic perspective? Of course, yes. I do agree with that, but it's just not always reality. I know from personal experience that there are going to be times where your only chance of surviving someone bigger than you is making them topple over, is taking them down to the ground. Now, I'm not saying that you should lay there all day. You may have to do this to keep from getting slammed yourself. They say, yeah, the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Well, I also say this, the bigger they are, the farther they can make you fall, and the harder they can make you fall. I had the unfortunate event in my early years of going up against a really big guy, and this is what I did. I'm going to utilize my grappling dummy here. Now, a lot of times in a situation, we end up like this. That's just reality. And you want to drop your center of gravity as much as you can if they grab you, so that you don't get picked up over their head and slammed to the concrete. I know in all these McDojo conversations, we say things like, never go to the ground, never get tied up. It's not reality. So often, we're just like this in real life. One thing you can do if you're tied up is cement that individual's foot to the ground. This is what I had to do. I just got a hold of his leg. I cemented his foot to the ground as much as possible with my shoulder and my legs, toppled him over. Let's look at this from another angle. If you try to wrestle and scrap with a big guy head to head, he's probably going to pick you up and get you over his shoulder. That's why you got to drop down. If you can get here and you can get a hold of his leg, you're not just grabbing the back of the leg, you're trying to force that leg to the ground so that it's hard for him to lift it up. And from here, your shoulder is in his thigh. You don't even have to have a lot of wrestling experience, but man, just bulldog and get him on the ground. And you might be able to get away from this situation or proceed to a ground attack. I know we don't want to go to the ground. We want to avoid that situation because we could get stabbed, something could happen, his friends could come, who knows? We don't want to be in that situation, but it's naive to not train in wrestling, to not learn how to at least take somebody who's bigger than you down to the ground. Again, I was in a situation and I was able to get this individual to the ground and get up and get back and get away because they had full intention of picking me up over their head and slamming me to the ground. I was able to drop down, get a hold of their ankle, and topple them over the exact same way. And yes, this dummy's not moving and fighting back. But that's the thing about wrestling, is that you're connected, you're grabbing things, you're already there. That's why wrestling and jiu-jitsu styles are so effective for one-on-one, is because we so naturally gravitate towards that as people. That's our most natural ingrained fighting style, is to wrestle with somebody else. But if you're going to wrestle with somebody bigger than you, you have to get leverage, and techniques like this will allow you to gain leverage even when you normally wouldn't. As a bonus, I'll just tell you this. If they get you up over their head, grab a hold of something. Grab some clothing, grab a hold of something to hold on to, because it's going to make it difficult for them to throw you to the ground without throwing themselves to the ground. And this is even where there's a size disadvantage. I was wrestling with a good friend of mine when I was up and coming in martial arts, and he was right much bigger, and he happened to get me up over his head, but I grabbed a hold of his shirt, and before he realized it, he tried to slam me to the ground, and he threw both of us to the ground. It's just something that happens natural. So if you do get picked up, grab something and hold on tight for dear life. Now let's talk about another simple way to create some space between you and a big person with a lot of reach, and that is a front kick. Now, if Bob had arms and he doesn't, I would be slightly outside of his reach right here, but my legs are not. Now, I'm talking about kicking in general. I realize some of you watching this video may not have a lot of practice with throwing an effective front kick. I'm just saying, as a rule of thumb and as a tool, a kick is something you can cook towards the legs, towards the solar plexus, to create a barrier. People say, what about my leg getting caught? Well, if you're going to kick and just leave it, well, that's what happens. With a good front kick, there should always be a return. You're not leaving it out there. You're sending it, returning it, but you're sending it and creating a barrier. So in simple terms, I'm out of his reach, but he's not out of mine, whether I'm doing an oblique style kick or a front kick. If you want to dive more into the technicality of an effective front kick, I did a video a while back titled 3 of the Best Kicks for the Street. You can go back and watch that video and you'll see more of a detailed tutorial on the technique. If you don't want to watch that video, just search any kind of tutorial on Muay Thai and front kicks. When it comes to striking, Muay Thai is where I am most partial. The last thing I will share is something I've talked heavily about over the last month on my channel, and that is getting off the center line and changing levels in the fight. The point is simple. If you just stand in front of a big person and swing for swing with them, you're at a disadvantage. I want you to go back to the point in the video early on where I demonstrated how the smaller guy changed levels to create a more advantageous striking position for himself. That applies to any kind of striking. It's just a matter of changing the levels and getting off the center line so that you can get in position to strike. Again, this is if you have to fight. Mike Tyson was excellent at getting off the line and changing those levels. Tyson was a heavyweight, but he was a short heavyweight. And you can go back and watch Tyson footage, whether your style is boxing or whatever it is, you can watch Tyson footage and you can see how effectively he changed the levels and got off the line and how it was a great advantage to him. All right, my friend, that brings us to a conclusion. I did this video as quick as I could. It's a broad, comprehensive subject. I dare not say I covered everything. I just wanted to throw out some tidbits, lay a foundation. The comment section allows us to have more conversation, and I don't cram everything into one video. I make video after video. So keep a lookout and take care.